And today I'm drinking. So this is two different kinds of teas. One is peppermint, and the other is like rose and chamomile and other stuff. So that's my tea. What are you drinking?
I have honey chamomile tea. It's just in one little packet. It's not fancy with two things you got going on there, but it's a cheap tea, but I enjoy it.
That's awesome. Okay, Amber, so thank you again. I thought it was going to be a great opportunity for you to share your experience coming from you. Okay, really, your experiences like New York, Charlotte, Cambodia. And really, while you were in New York, you had taken a trip to Cambodia, right?
Yes.
Or you just knew, okay, yeah.
It was,
you did.
In 2018 for 2 weeks, yes.
So you took a 2-week trip to Cambodia. You came back home. You experienced Jesus. You came to Charlotte, experienced him, every day, but then again.
All of those were an adventure, yeah.
And then you end up in Cambodia for a year, and now you're back in New York City.
This is all true.
Wow.
It is. It's a journey, because hearing you say, I'm like, oh, Lord, where have I been?
Yeah. And this isn't a matter of how many years?
I would say maybe since end of 2018, early 2019. So maybe almost 2 years now I've been on this journey. Yeah.
2 years. All right, Amber. So give us a rundown of when you, as far back as you can remember, first of all, when you realized that you were a missionary, and then 2, when you realized that you were sent to Cambodia, right? And then 3. So when you realized you were a missionary.
Okay.
When you realized that you were called to Cambodia, and then that moment you realized God had said it's time to go.
Yeah, because that's good, because the second and third are have a great time span in between.
Okay.
I would say where I first knew, if I can rephrase it, where I first felt called to be a missionary. Can I say that, if you don't mind?
Please.
It was actually in college. I went to a small private Christian school called Nyack College. And I had just become a Christian for maybe like a year before I went off to that school. Like, I got saved as a teenager. And so when I went to this Christian school and people were studying like theology and missionary work and all these things, I thought, like, I didn't even know that was possible. I mean, I knew I was going to Christian school, but like, I didn't know that people study those things. I just thought you like study to be a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer, blah, blah, blah. But the idea that people could study the Bible, or people could study international relief work, missionary work, I thought, what? So I just went in as a business major because I went to a business high school. Anyway, as I started to make new friends and learn about these other types of programs, I too switched my major to do both. So I did a little bit of business and a little bit of missionary studies, but they call it, I don't remember. Oh my God, I haven't been in school for like 5 years. ICS, intercultural studies, that's the word. They call it
intercultural studies.
Yes, and it's basically like studying missionary work, international relief, community development. Those are the types of classes you have where you study this. And so it was actually in college where I started to take these classes, and I thought, oh wow, like you could really learn how to share the gospel, but more in the context of where you are, depending on the country, or if you're in an urban area, things like that. So anyway, long story short, it was in college at a Christian school where I didn't even know that there were these types of studies that people could do. For me, it was intercultural studies, but for other people, they went down like a pastoral ministry track or other types of tracks. But for me, it was called intercultural studies, and that's where I first felt called. That's the first question.
Yes, yay, thank you.
I'm trying to like in my brain like follow along. The second one is really special because I feel like this is where it gets a little bit deeper. I think I was still in college at that time, or maybe I was almost finishing, and I went to a conference. I love conferences, y'all. Like, I've always been a conference girl. Like, since I got saved, that's just like, I just love them. I personally love these conferences. Anyway, I went to them when I was a teenager, but this time I was actually a little bit older, attending this conference with some friends. And I remember this is like a 3-day conference. Again, I love conferences. Anyway, we were on like, I think day 2 or day 3. And I was sitting in the car with some friends, kind of waiting to go inside. And I was just like pouring my heart out to them, like telling them, like, I don't know what God's plan for me is. I don't know what I'm doing, which I think some of us go through in different seasons. But in that season of my life, I just felt like, what am I doing? And I remember like literally crying to them, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that night when we ended up going inside, the pastor was preaching a sermon. And from what I can remember, I mean, this was a few years ago. That's why I said there's a time span between 2 and 3. This is like long before I ever went to Cambodia, before I knew anything about Cambodia. And so anyway, I went to this conference and the pastor's preaching. He's like, hey, God wants to get you guys to your Rome, Paul's journey to Rome. That's all I remember now because it was a few years ago. But like talking about Paul's journey to Rome, and that we should ask the Lord, hey, like, what is your Rome? So I sat there in the conference, and again, I'm like, Lord, where's my Rome? Like, where's mine? I feel like everybody else got theirs, but like, what about me, Lord? Where's my Rome? And I promise you guys, I just felt like God just dropped one word in my spirit. And he literally just dropped the word Cambodia. And I was like, okay. And I wrote it down in a journal and I still have it. I don't know where it is. I brought it to Charlotte. I remember because when my mom visited, I asked her to bring it so I can remember like where you remember you were with me. Because I just wanted to make sure like, is this the Lord really calling me there? But this was like years ago. And I promise you guys, like I didn't at the time exactly know where Cambodia was. Stupid me. But like I knew it was in Asia. But like it's Southeast Asia in particular, like there's different things that I just didn't know so much about the country at that time. And I thought that was so weird because to be honest, I didn't end up going until a few years later. But I just knew in my heart that like, that was just it, that someday I would serve there. Again, I don't know for how long, if maybe super long term, we'll see what the Lord does because I'm also going through a little bit of a season right now. But anyway, like I knew that someday I would, and it was simply because the Lord had literally dropped it in my spirit, that one word. Didn't give me any detail, and it was at a conference, simply by me asking God, where is my Rome? Just, in obedience to what the pastor was preaching. And I'm like, okay, God. So that was number 2. For number 3, how did I end up there? How did this happen?
Because now by number 3, you know that you are called to Cambodia.
Yeah.
And now you're just like, Lord. So, okay, just a quick backstory.
Yeah.
Amber and I don't even want to say roommates because we're like family. We were like sisters living together.
We've been through a lot.
Yes. And I remember you having this desire, like this heart, and I will go more in depth about it, but it was about human trafficking. You have a heart for human trafficking. And then, we began to kind of just search or seek God for purpose and all these things. And we went on a fast in the house.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So yes. And so go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was like a juice fast, and all of us who were living together, we decided to go on this fast. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was on the last night we were just all talking. And I think it was Miss Denise, so I might have brought it up, and I put some videos on the TV from YouTube. And I'm like, hey guys, this is like the ministry in Cambodia that like I was with, a year ago, and I really love it, blah, blah, blah. And Miss Denise, I love that woman. She's like, so why didn't you at least apply, or why didn't you at least like look into the application to serve there? And I'm like, you're right. And I literally applied that very night. Yes. I literally applied that very night. So it was through a fast. And so a lot of these things that I'm sharing happen through specific events. It was at a conference, it was through fasting, which I believe God can speak to us in all different ways in our quiet time, specifically reading our word. But sometimes he also speaks to us in these different moments of events or fasting. But yes, that was the very moment where I thought, I'm just going to jump in. And that was a journey too, to even get there. But yes,
I remember. But think about it. I'm so honored to have gone through that journey with you, because now that I think about it, when you said yes and you surrendered, the fear and everything, how everything fell in place for you, Amber.
It did, but in the beginning, it was a little bit of resistance.
Yes, of course, right? But I remember when you went home and like your ticket was bought. It was just like you know, it was like, you're going where? You're believing God for what? Okay, here's your ticket. Like,
It was a dear friend
Oh,
of mine that literally just through conversation, I was coming to New York to visit. I think it was my dad's birthday or something, because I was still living in Charlotte with you. And yeah, I just came home, hanging out with friends. And I was like, hey, this is what I believe God is calling me to do, blah, 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 share the mission. And then that night, my dear friend just purchased the ticket. So I already had like a way to get there before I went public, before I like shared with the world and social media, like,
yes.
hey, I'm going. I had like a way to get there literally physically.
Wow, that's amazing. It's
I know.
beautiful
God
because
is
it
so
shows
faithful.
how God makes his provision once we obey, you know,
Yes.
and this is something that
Yes.
has been brewing up in you for years. You know, we expect things to happen overnight, but really it was years that God had been hinting towards this thing. And when it was time, he showed you it was because he made the provision. It was that
Yes.
Kairos moment.
Yes. I mean, because I could not have done it or made it possible without the help of many people. Because this kind of work
Amber,
is, you know what I mean? So
can you
it took
share?
a village.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it did. It did. And actually, speaking of taking a village, can you share about that moment? Because your heart's desire, you know, you would have had to fundraise. You know, you would have had to get help financially to make this thing possible. And God, of course, he knew that, and he knew he would have already made the provision. But I remember your
Yeah.
heart's desire was that the people that donated, that they would get something back, not just witness the
Yeah.
experience, but they can get a tax write-off. Like, you were so concerned about the giver, which is good. It's
No, because,
amazing.
and I'll tell you why. And like, at least from my perception, and again, all these things that I'm sharing with you and for the people who are watching are again from my perception, because I'm aware that different people think differently, but these are just through my personal experiences and just the way that I think. And lately, it's just, I feel like everybody feels like they're getting scammed in some way when it comes to money, or anytime someone's jumping into something new, or even missionary work or volunteer work. Like, it's sad that that's the case in what this world has come to, because there are things that have happened. But I was just concerned that people would know that the money was going to be in the right place, and that it was going through like a church. And like, I mean, it was given to me obviously so that I could do the work, but it had like a financial covering, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So at the time, it was just something that I was worried about, because I wanted people to feel safe in giving if they felt on their heart. You know, not everybody has to give, but for those who decided to, I wanted them to know that there was a safe space for it. Obviously, there are other outlets. Anyone could give to me directly. But at the time, in the beginning of that journey, I just thought, well, I want to have some credibility. I hate to say that, but just the way
Yeah.
the world is going and the different
It's
types of
the
GoFundMes and
it's the
just being
truth.
real.
Yeah,
I
please.
just
And
wanted to have some credibility. Like,
yeah,
this is
now I
promotion,
want
guys.
you to talk about that, because I remember sitting with you when you were praying for that, and that step of faith you had to take in order to, again, obeying, right? Or by faith going forward and seeing that God had already made the provision.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe, I don't know how long ago, how far apart it was in the journey, but I had a friend who just gave me a call one day, and she's like, hey, I'd love to talk to you about the mission. You know, I'd love to hear about it. And, you know, we'd love to create an account for you. And it's just basically a link that you can give to people who want to donate. And I thought, what, this is incredible. Like, it was something that I was praying for, but I didn't know exactly how to get there. And I will be real honest, also because I've been traveling around at that point. I was in Charlotte, you know, I left New York almost 8 months at the time. And so that's why building relationships in any space that we're in, or in any season that we're in, is so important, because God had used different people from different seasons in my life to help me on this mission that I felt called to. So it wasn't just in one space, it was a church in New York City. But even then, like, it's so crazy how God uses different people for different things. But I was specifically praying for that. I was specifically praying to have just a safe space for people to give that they felt comfortable giving.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, okay. So now we know at this point you're getting ready. You get sent off to Cambodia. Let's go straight to Cambodia.
Yeah.
I want you to tell us how did you feel when you got there? And just I want to hear, share with, I'll talk to you this morning. I was like, as much as you're led and comfortable sharing, share the raw truth. We know it's good. We know, you know,
The
it worked
highlights,
out. You were there
I
a
shared the
year.
highlights. Let's be real, I
Yeah,
did,
and
because you know who
everybody
don't.
exactly, and everybody watching now and later, and those who follow you, who get your newsletters every month or so, we know, you know, high level, the highlights of what's going on, but share with us,
Yeah.
like share with us the real raw, the tea from Cambodia. Give us the tea from
Okay.
Cambodia.
Well, I'll start literally by answering your first question, like how I felt when I first arrived, because that I think was the hardest part of the whole journey. It was mainly, sorry, I got a message.
No, go ahead.
It was mainly when I had arrived, of course, I was happy to be there because I was already traveling for like a full 24 hours. So I was quite exhausted and happy to be on like Cambodian soil, of course. But I would say at least within the first 3 days of arriving and staying where I was staying, because I needed to find somewhere to live, was really lonely, extremely lonely. And I never really shared that with anyone because I think in my mind, it's just part of the journey. And there's a lot of things that I realize that are part of a journey of different missionaries that we think are just normal and that everyone knows just because like, oh, it's just a normal part of being a missionary. But I realized that that's not always the case. And not everybody really knows what happens. But I would say the first 3 days I was really lonely, mainly because of jet lag. I know it's like a common physical thing that we encounter. But like I was in a space of just like leaving all my family and friends behind on my own to come to this new place where like I am like awake in this new place when everyone's sleeping. It was just like a whole lot of stuff going on mentally. And then learning like how to grieve just leaving. I felt like I didn't really do that. Even when I was on the plane and having that space, I didn't just think about it until I arrived. And then all the emotions just like came on top of me. So I think like God was teaching me to learn how to grieve things when you are entering a new place and giving that to him. And then I was in that space of learning how to make new friends all at the same time. I spent a lot of time alone. And it's not for any special reason. It's just part of the journey. It's part of the process when you're doing something new. And I was spending a lot of time alone in a new country. And so that was the hardest part. I would say was being extremely lonely. And I'm not talking about lonely like, oh, I want to bae. I'm talking about lonely and like, because you know, there's different types. I'm talking about.
I mean, like, you are alone. You're literally alone in a new country. A place where that you don't even know the language per se of that. You are literally it's, I mean, I can't, it's almost like going to space, like going to a new planet.
I mean, thankfully, I did know a few people. I don't want to be like overly dramatic about it, but because they had great hospitality and they did help weave me into the church there. So of course that did happen, but I'm talking about in the very beginning, like you said, it was just extremely lonely, you know? So of course the great things did happen, but in those very moments, like, yes, I was just in a new place, meeting new people. And some people speak English, but not everybody. So now I'm hearing like all these different things. And so it's just a crazy experience. You know, it's just, especially when you know, like, okay, on the first time I went, okay, I know I'm leaving in 2 weeks, right? And you're on a team. Like I went with a team. Now I'm going, I don't have a team. I mean, I'm joining like a bigger team for people who are like on the ground there. But like, I don't have a team that came with me and I know I'm not leaving in 2 weeks. And I ended up staying 6 months longer than I thought I was, but that's a whole nother story. But like, yes, it's that beginning of starting something new and just feeling extremely lonely in that time. And again, I said before, not like having a babe, but like the loneliness of just like not having your family or friends, or even the idea that you can like be close to anybody for a little while because you have to develop that again in a new space.
Wow. So you in this journey, I mean, you helped. Okay, let's talk about this. Your role there, as at least when you were there, because we know that when you go back, it may change. But what did you do for the ministry that you served with there?
Yeah, it's twofold. So I'll start by saying I spent time in the office during the week, specifically helping our NGO, which is basically our non-governmental organization. And I just got the chance to be in our marketing department where I basically helped share the story of ICF, sharing, you know, what we do, basically helping put together videos, just coming up with ideas, not that I actually like put them together myself, but just like helping
like almost like on an innovative team, like innovation, kind of like you brought the ideas.
Kind of, yeah. I was on a team, so yeah, just coming up with different ways that we can share the story well of ICF, because it's an international organization. So we have like churches in the U.S. who help the church and NGO, but also in Europe. And so basically, just like preparing our newsletters, different things to basically share the story of who ICF is. And we needed to do it continually because ICF also runs off donations, and so it was just a way to help them in the office share the story well.
Sorry, real quick. Tell us what ICF stands for and what do they do?
Yeah, ICF is International Christian Fellowship, but I normally say ICF Cambodia because there's different ICFs across the world. And it's basically, it's a church. It's a church at large. That's the main goal. That's the vision. That's the mission, to bring people to Jesus. But we also do things on a practical level, on a local level, having a holistic approach where we do a lot of different social programs. And that's what I mean when I say NGO. It's basically like a not-for-profit, but internationally we say NGO. So it's also like a nonprofit who serves the community. We have education scholarships. We do food. So it's just basically like an NGO and a church.
Awesome. Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, great. So you help share the vision through different social media, or not, or rather, I guess social media platforms, and you help come up with ideas on how to stay innovative in that realm. So what's the second part?
Yes. So the second part was through our church specifically, and it was starting a new ministry in the evenings, and it was the Evening Children's Ministry. And this is really important because pre-corona, we had 3 major celebrations, basically church services. And we had one for children in the morning where hundreds of children would come from all different villages, and we would pick them up on the trucks, and they would have church and eat and have so much fun. Like, it was this big event every Sunday for the kids. They knew we were coming, they were ready for us, and they wanted to be there. And then it was the same Saturday nights for the teenagers, and then Sunday nights were for adults. The reason why I'm sharing this is because for Sunday evenings, we didn't have like a big program for the children who would come with their parents. Sunday mornings, children would basically come on their own with their little brother or sister, but it wasn't really set up for parents. It was really for the local villages. But Sunday night, when the parents came, there wasn't necessarily a space for them, at least for the older ones. So I basically just helped pilot a ministry for the children who came with their parents. And when we started early on, we didn't have that many. It's kind of an interesting story. We had a few. And then, Corona hit, and we didn't get to meet like we normally did for a little while. But then when we regathered, hundreds of Cambodian families would come, and we found that a lot more children were coming with their parents. And so we went from maybe like 5 to almost 30 within just a few months when we regathered. So it's basically just starting this ministry for children who would come with their parents, so that they would also have a place to meet Jesus. And so that was a journey in itself, because I had to learn a lot there. Learn, how to build a team. It's so hard for me to ask for help sometimes. I got to get better at it. But like learning how to build a team, and there's obviously the language barrier and things like that. And so that was a journey itself. But I spent a lot of my time on the weekends preparing for this ministry, and then during the week, basically volunteering my time to help in the NGO.
Wow. And God sustained you the entire year. He provided. Like, you didn't miss a meal per se. You had a roof over your head. You got to buy a moto. Tell us what a moto is.
First of all, if I could go back to the question you said about like what my experience was like, and to just be raw and honest, the first part was loneliness, right? The second part was the moto. I know it might be so funny to people, because like if you think about it, it is, but I don't even know how to explain this. And like, I might think I'm crazy, but it's literally a miracle from God that I ever learned how to do this. And I needed to, because I needed to get around, like, and it needed to happen at some point. But it was literally a miracle from God, because I'm about to confess something really bad. Don't judge me. But I never really learned how to ride a bike. Okay.
Oh, girl.
I'm just saying, so
Yes.
now think about it. You're in another country, and the main way to get around is on a moto. I mean, obviously I could use a bike, but I didn't know how to ride a bike. And then the main way to like go further is a moto. And I'm like, I need to figure this out. And so I had this really awesome friend who helped me through the process. But through the process, I fell like 2 times, one time really, really bad. And my knee was all busted up, but thank you, Lord, for healing. Obviously, it healed over time. But you just got to be careful out there because there's no rules when you drive. And I think like one of the other times there was a truck that drove by really fast. And like God has saved my life so many times, y'all. And I'm talking about like on a physical level, he really, really did. But the moto, when it did come to pass and I learned, gave me a sense of more independence. Because before that, I had to rely on people most of the time to get from here to there. And I was praying, I'm like, Lord, I want to be more efficient. I want to feel like a local, like I need to figure this out. And I cried so many days because I couldn't drive this stupid moto. But lo and behold,
and a moto is not a motorcycle.
No, it's like I don't know how to explain it. It's like a moped.
It's like a moped.
Yeah, it still uses like gas. I can't even really explain it. We might have to show a picture, but like it got some power, these things. Let me tell you, okay? I mean, it's not like a full-blown motorcycle, no, but we call it like a moto, but it's like it's quite heavy. I don't really know how to explain it. Yeah. But like it's just the main way to get around, and I needed to do it. And I thought surely there was absolutely no way, especially after I fell. And thank God for the people of God, because my friend was like, you're going to get on it the next day. She's like, you need to learn. Like, you can do it like the next day. And I was like, I'm hurt, girl, come on. But again, it's a miracle. I don't know. One day it just happened. Like one day I got on it and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, so, I mean, again, you talk to someone else who has a different experience and it was like easy for them. But for me, God knew that that was something that I was really struggling with because I wanted to be like everybody else. Like I wanted to be independent. I wanted to get myself around. I wanted to fit in, you know, but it was for me a real horrifying experience to learn the moto. And even my leg is still a little banged up, but you know, it's all right. It's part of the journey. And that's what I'm learning. These things are just part of the journey. So there's my moto story for the day, y'all.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing your motor story. Okay, perfect. So we know what you do. We know that you've been there a year. We know that God has provided for you to be there for that year. We know that it was lonely in the beginning, but you began to make friends. You made friends. You went on journeys. You even took up a class to learn the language.
Yes.
So yeah, tell us about that. Whatever pops up to you when you think about making friends and learning the language and stuff like that.
Takes time. That's the first thing. And I had to learn to give myself grace. Because some of you know that I had originally planned to go just for 6 months and I had fundraised for that. And Corona happened. My flight got canceled. It was extremely difficult to get home. And I'm like, you know, I love what I'm doing. I love this ministry. I love my team. I think I can stick it out a little bit longer because I have to anyway. And I just love what I'm doing. So anyway, through that process, I actually learned that relationship building takes time. And I would say, for any missionary work, especially if you're in another language country where you don't know the language by heart or fluently. Because for me, missionary work is actually getting to know the culture, knowing their language, finding ways to truly connect with them, because obviously America is different from Cambodia, and like learning the art of literally dying to yourself so that you can learn another culture and connect with them. And so I was going to school twice a week. It was an hour each time. So I had about 2 hours a week of Khmer class. And I really, really enjoyed it. I loved my teacher. And I'm so grateful for that experience, because even when Corona happened, a lot of teachers in that school had lost their jobs because a lot of the people who were living in Cambodia from another country left. And so it was also basically another way for us missionaries to support the school because we were still going. And I really enjoyed even that community there. I made a friend there and I traveled with her a little bit. And so that was also a journey. But my number one thing is that it takes time. It takes time, and it's okay to give yourself grace. I will be honest, I don't think that 6 months was enough. Obviously, the Lord can do anything in a certain amount of time. But through this type of missionary work, I realized that relationship building takes time. And in my experience, working with Cambodians, it took them some time to open up. And I felt like I had finally gotten to that place at 6 months, and then I thought I was leaving. And I'm like, it took me 6 months to even get here. And then the Lord had, you know, allowed me to stay. And so I got to do that. And then again, that's another reason why I feel the call to return, because I still feel like there's work to do, and there's still a lot of relationship building there, and even more of the language. So it's a journey. I know that short mission trips are awesome, and I believe in them, but I also think long-term sometimes has a little bit more effect, because you're letting the people know that you care about them, you love them, and you want to know about their culture. And almost, I hate to say this, I said it in a video the other day, but almost earning the space to share the gospel. I know some people might want to stone me, but of course, if God told you to share it right away to someone, you should. But I'm talking about in a context where you're living in another country and you don't know anything and it takes time. You want the people to give you that space because they trust you and they love you and they know that you want the best for them. And so that's what I had to learn, is that 6 months, but God knew, because that's why I stayed for 1 year. And I feel a call to return. So almost earning that space to relationship in this context specifically.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so let's now, just real quick. I heard you told me that Corona did not hit the same way in Cambodia as it did here in the States. Tell us about that.
Girl, it's kind of crazy when I think about it, because I will be honest, I have no thoughts onto how it came this way. Like, I can't come up with ideas as to how I might have won. But when it first started, you know, Cambodia is a little bit closer to China, or at least that's where they say it originated, or whatever people believe, whatever. Like, at the time we were going through the process, we're like, oh, we're quite close to China when it first, you know, was public. But I will say, at least again, in my personal experience, we've never really encountered the sickness, and we were still like there. And I will say this, there were restrictions. The government did come up with restrictions that were actually lifted and put back up. So it was like constant changes, literally for months. The government would say this and this. So we went through a lot of restrictions, but like, I will say we personally never went through a real lockdown. We were still like going into the office for a little while. We were still having church until, you know, the government was like, no more. But I personally didn't know anyone who had it. No one I knew anyone who had it. And in my opinion, from what I'm learning about Corona, is that if one of us had it in the office, then I think it would have perhaps have gone rapid. And when I say office, our team is about 100 people, and we have about now this was at the time, we have 90 Cambodian staff. And so the missionaries don't get paid, but like through the NGO and the church, our Cambodians, they get paid salary. So anyway, all to say that when we were among staff, at least in my knowledge, no one had it. And like, I didn't really, like, the hospitals weren't full. Like, I just can't really explain it. And for me, it was really no fear. But I will say, in the very beginning, in the villages, again, we haven't heard of anyone having it, but there was some fear, and specifically amongst, for the Cambodians, amongst foreigners. Like, if you're a foreigner, like, you might give it to us, which is basically kind of what was happening at the time. So I also had to be quite careful, but I would only go to the same places, like church, somewhere to eat, and, you know, back to the office, things like that. So I wasn't going crazy, but we did have to be careful. But anyway, all to say, basically, I can't explain it. It's really weird, but I mean, we didn't wear masks for a very long time. It wasn't really mandated. But I will say it destroyed the economy. So that I know for sure it was really tough on a lot of Cambodians, the economy wise, but sickness wise, I wish I could tell y'all how.
So 2 things. How did ICF help the economy there? And then secondly, how did it feel coming back to the States and having to wear a mask 24/7 and can't gather?
Well, I would say, I don't know, the economy, the first was, because ICF works really closely with a lot of people in the local villages, we were able to help quickly. And so the first thing we did was buy all the materials that we wanted to provide for the people, was buying it from the local market. So like buying like tons of bags of rice and different materials, so different things that we knew that families would need. So that's the first part, because we bought like a whole lot. And we made emergency packages. Our social team did this. They made emergency packages to give to families. So that's the first part, was buying everything they can from the local markets. And there was still a lot. Not everybody was, because it wasn't that bad. Not everybody was like hoarding stuff, like from what I saw in America. You know,
it was bad here.
I can imagine. So I'm not saying, you know, we went and bought everything and there was no more. I mean, in fact, people were having a hard time buying stuff anyway, but we were like pouring into the economy that way, basically buying everything locally and then giving it to families for a short amount of time. And through the process, we had some classes where we wanted to like share about what sustainability looked like, because we wanted the families to know that we can't do this forever. And so we wanted to help them find ways to sustain themselves. So we even like within our emergency packages, they bought like different vegetable seeds and different things like that to teach them how to grow some of their own food, you know, different things like that. So yes, we wanted to help them, of course, but the goal always in the end is to at least have a direction on the mission towards sustainability. So that was a journey too.
That's amazing. And then how did it feel coming back to the US, having to like live confined?
Well, I will start by saying it was traveling on the plane, because to get home, it took like 24 hours. And I went from like rarely ever wearing a mask. And sometimes we did, like, to honor the government. If there was like certain places where you needed to, we did. But often I didn't have to. So anyway, being on a plane and traveling for 24 hours, and from never wearing a mask or rarely to wearing it for like over 24 hours was so annoying. I texted my mom. I'm being so dramatic. Please forgive me. But I was like, Mom, I can't breathe, because I just wasn't used to having like something over my nose for that long of a period of time. Like, seriously. And then when I got home, like my entire, like literally, I had like so many pimples, but it was just here, like just like, I'm like, okay, my skin, sorry, this is like,
no, go ahead. It's
weird
fine.
problems.
This is the truth.
Like weird problems. But you know, these are like the little things.
Yeah.
Where I came and like my whole face broke out and it was just such a mess. And then like coming home and so excited to see my family, but realizing that I couldn't see everyone that I wanted to see, and learning to deal with that too. And then again, the grief that I was talking about earlier, because now I have to grieve a little bit of some friendships from when I was there. Of course, I'm going back, but now I'm in a new space and I don't get to see them every day and blah, blah, blah. So just learning to deal with different types of seasons in life. But it was really hard to wear the mask, because I know that I should and I wanted to be obedient. And then like coming home knowing that I can't do everything that I wanted to do. Just the reality, and learning how to be more creative with time at home, like I'm sure many of you were doing months before me.
Yeah, so right? Yeah, wow, that's amazing. What I wanted to touch really quickly is kind of like the dark moments, if you're led to share, or if you know, however you're led to, but those moments where you may have felt scared, or the times you experienced spiritual warfare, because that country, it's a country, right? I want to say it right. It's Buddhist, right?
Yes, primarily Buddhist.
So,
yes,
primarily.
I would say like 90% would confess that they are, or excuse me, profess.
Yeah, that they're Buddhist. Okay, so talk to me about the times where you could feel like warfare. How did you make it through? Like, what were some things that, because it's people need to learn. So, what were some things that you did?
It's so funny you say that, because since I've been home, I feel like I've been sleeping so much better. And I didn't even think about that until like a few days ago, where I thought, wow, I'm sleeping so much better. But I was living alone when I was there. I mean, I had great community, but I had like a little studio that I was staying in. Praise God for somewhere to live. And I had like lived alone before, like my own room, like in college. But even then, you're like living on a dorm, in a dorm floor with like hundreds of other girls. So, but anyway, this was the first time where I felt like I was living alone. Particularly for me, it happened at night. And I remember when I, like the first few times, I guess it's quite common there, dogs would literally bark, but only at night. And I remember telling a friend, because, you know, they had a few other thoughts, and I'm like, yeah, but it only happens at night. Don't you realize that? But they would like howl, and it would be like multiple dogs at once. And it would happen like, I don't know, every few days, and then it would stop, and then it would happen again, and it would wake me up because it was so loud. At first I thought like it's just dogs, you know, whatever. But like the longer I was there, when I would wake up, it would like bring me into fear. And I started thinking, like, in my opinion, again, I say my opinion because, you know,
Yeah.
I felt like it was like demonic. It would wake people up. Anyone who's living in this same village would wake you up at 3, 4 in the morning, and they would be like barking. Some of them would squeal, and it almost felt like they were hurt. I don't even know what was happening because I couldn't see. And that was the thing. It would be at night and I couldn't see, but I could only hear, and it would wake me from my sleep. And it just brought so much fear. But I think I stopped being afraid when I realized what it was. Yeah. Because the first few nights I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? Like, these dogs are crazy. But then because it happened so frequently and I was there for, again, like learning to live life somewhere else, I thought, wow, this might be demonic. Like, I think this is actually spiritual. And that's when I was like, okay, why should I fear? But that didn't happen until I could recognize at least what I thought it was. Right. Because it was so loud, it would wake me up at night. And then aside from that, even some nights where they weren't barking so loud, like tons of dogs, I would just feel like I had a lot of spiritual warfare on my own and just like being in that room. But then again, when I started to realize what it was, it started to go away little by little, but I can't say like I just stopped having fear overnight. I can't say that. It took me some time to work through that, especially being alone. Yeah. But for me, it just felt really heavy, mainly at night. It just felt heavy, really at night. And, you know, the spiritual world, some may say looks different in different places. And I really believe that. But for me, it was mainly at night through my sleep and with the dogs. And then also there was a season within our church where we had like, we got it under control. But I remember like when it first started happening, you know, where people would start manifesting certain spirits and stuff. And like, I would be honest, I had personally not really seen it so much in America. I know it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I'm talking about in my personal experience. Right. I saw it more often there. And when I joined the prayer team, our leader kind of walked with us through the process to share that actually sometimes these things happen. And then they developed, I hate to say a system, but they developed a system where when it would happen, they would have like a team of men who would, you know, carry this person out and then, you know, have some prayer in another room and different things like that, that we had to be ready for. So it's quite interesting just in my experience of what I've seen in America and what I've seen there, and walking through fear and then learning like why I shouldn't have it anymore, because actually it's in my face. Because we can talk about it in America, but like actually when you experience it, then you really know, like for me at least, like what it is to trust God in those times.
That's powerful. That's amazing. The fortification spiritually that happens through that is amazing. Wow. That's huge. It's so much, you know, so many stories to tell, and just, I mean, witnessing the growth in you, like the peace. You know, there were times I called Amber, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, and I know that, you know, tell us 2 more things.
Yeah.
How did you see Jesus there? Like, I guess this is like a one question, but it's kind of 2 part. It's like you coming from this life over there, you realizing certain things are just not as important as we thought it was. And then how did in that moment you see Jesus?
It's exactly, I love that you said that, because that's exactly what I was going to say. I actually saw Jesus through the faith in other people. At least the believers who were on the ground there, because also a lot of my role was just to help empower what God was already doing, because, you know, God was moving before I got there, but he just allowed me to be a part of the story of what he's doing in that country. But specifically, it was the believers who were there and watching their faith, because obviously in a country like that, some people just have less than we do. And what, like, the way that I saw Jesus move was in people's lives who believed him for great things when they literally had nothing. And it's easy for me to say, you know, living in another country and having everything that I needed, because of course God always provides. But again, it looks different when you literally have nothing and Jesus is all you have. We're learning about new believers who their family rejects them because they don't believe in Jesus. It's things like that I personally see Jesus. You know, it might not look traditional. And that's what I learned being in another country, is that people think differently than we do. Wow, can you believe it? You know, and I had to learn that it's not always like black and white, at least in my experience, in certain areas. Like, of course, the Bible is clear about certain things, but I'm saying in just the way that people think, it's just different. And so I really saw Jesus through the faith of the believers there, and through new believers who had to leave everything behind to follow Jesus. And for people who were believing God for literally everything.
Yeah. Wow. So you coming back to the States, your outlook on life is completely different. Did you find yourself getting frustrated by, and I'm sure you did, but I want you to talk about it, how we see and how we view and how we want and how we feel like we need compared to where you just came back from?
Yes. Yes. And I hate to say yes and no, because America is where I grew up all my life. I knew kind of what I would be encountering, but it did make me look at the value of things much differently, and started making me think like, oh, maybe I don't want to spend so much on this, because maybe I know I could find it somewhere cheaper. And normally I'm just like, oh, just whatever, buy here or that for what I need. But like learning the value of things and like what things truly cost. Because in Cambodia, just life is much cheaper there, just to be real.
Yeah.
So like being here, if you go out to eat, which I mean, restaurants are closed now, but like when they were open, like I know that if I go there, I'm gonna have to spend like $20 to $25, or if you go to a cheaper place, maybe 15 to 20 on a meal, when I normally spend $5 in Cambodia on a nice meal, or less even. Like that's if you go to like a nicer place, but like I could spend literally $1 on a meal in Cambodia. Wow. Or $2. So just like learning the value of things and what I personally was willing to pay for certain things. But I do have to be realistic. Like the American economy is different. We need to pour into the American economy, and we should buy stuff, people, support small businesses. But yeah. I'm just saying, like in my personal experience, the value of certain things, I just thought like, I want to save more if I can, or I want to put my resources elsewhere to support this mission, or to support this mission, things like that. Just like, finding different places.
It's almost like you learn stewardship.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes,
that's good.
Exactly.
Wow. Exactly. So I just, we're hitting on an hour, and I want to kind of go over what some people said here on the comments, but before that,
see it. Oh my goodness.
But before that, I just want to recap. So we talked about, you getting saved, realizing that you were a missionary, realizing where God was sending you. About 3 years later, you actually take the leap of faith, or the step of faith, and you decide, I'm gonna go. You didn't know how you was gonna get there, but you just said yes by applying. You were accepted, and next thing you know, even though it took work, the overflow came as far as like your provision to get there. You left there, you thought you left here, went there, learned so much, learned how to build a team, how to work in a team where there's language barriers. You learned how to serve the community. You learned a lot about yourself. You then realized within 6 months that it was time to stay longer, not just because of Corona, but because you prayed about it and the Lord spoke. And then you're there a year. You hear it's time to come back, but then you realize God says it's not for long. You're going back to Cambodia.
Yes.
So you will be going back to serve. Yes. So we have the giving information on the comments. And so, anybody can just click on the first comment of this video, and number one, subscribe to her newsletter so you can keep up with what she's doing.
And I get more specific in the newsletter. Like I share more about specific projects and different stories if people ever want to know.
So it's just to keep up with the life, like what's going on with Amber, especially if you choose to give to her, whether it's once or monthly, whether you can keep up with what it is that you're doing with your money and what she.
Where's the money going?
God is like using her as a middleman, right? And then there's also the link for the ICF Cambodia ministry, so you can see who it is that she's supporting, and so are you with your finances. And also, giving financially is great, and also prayers are so powerful, and it's needed. But Amber, can you tell them the last point I want to make, aside from following her, and you share that information, but tell them what happens when they give you, when they give to the mission. What is that money doing? Not just for you, but overall.
Yeah, thanks, Theo, for that. That's a major component because I don't get paid to do what I do, but it's to the people of God. Amen. Thank you,
Amen.
guys. But yeah, just to be transparent, and again, I'm speaking on behalf of myself because I don't know what other missionaries exactly how they do it, but for me and what I've seen, what we do and with my team, when the money is given to me, I basically use it for just my way of life out there. The first, I use it for a Khmer class so I can learn the language and support the school. So again, it's right into the economy because I'm going to actually a Cambodian school that teaches us Khmer. I use it for food out there to eat. Thank God it's not that hard to find food. I will say I'm really grateful for that. And I love Khmer food. It's also for like the moto and gas. If, you know, that's my main way to get around. If I need an oil change or something, just transportation. I use it for the rent. Living out there, I had a little studio when I stayed there for the 1 year, and it was amazing. So just making sure that and that also making sure that I have somewhere to live, but that also goes into the economy. I mean, my landlord was a Khmer guy, and he was awesome. Also for like travel insurance, there's these little things that like are just part of this journey. I made a list of it in another video I did, but those are the main ones that I can think of. And if anyone ever has like specific questions, like I'd be happy. I'm talking about, you know, in another space. If anyone like, I'm very happy to share that because again, I know sometimes with money, some people have different thoughts, and so I'm always happy to share. You know, what am I doing, and where is this money going? Oh, and for visas, because it costs a lot to be in another country and to be there legally. You know, so. Yeah, these kinds of things are just part of the process, and it costs.
Yeah. And how can they follow you?
Yeah, I'm mainly, the two platforms I'm mainly on is just Facebook and Instagram. Instagram is just AmberLee_XO. And then my Facebook is connected to your to this, but those are the two outlets I really post on. So, you know, let's say you are not on the newsletter, but you just want to see some of the things of what life looks like out there, you mainly see it through Facebook. On Instagram, those are the two places that I really share my life and what God is doing.
Awesome. I just was typing your Instagram handle. So here's some comments. Vasha said yes to conferences. Danya Molfinger said,
oh yeah.
She said, I remember when you had no idea what you wanted to do, but with your business background and your love for Christ and sharing his gospel of grace, you ended up being on the battlefield for him. And I'm so happy, proud, and thankful for you.
Oh my gosh, love you, Danya. Love you. I'm gonna cry. You guys, Vasha. Oh my gosh, stop it.
Danya said, praise God. Wow. Milagros Valentin said, welcome home, Amber. Daniel Delise said, Amber, I remember I was with you the day before you left, and you were so optimistic and so hopeful in what God was going to do. And you weren't fully packed, LOL. Your faith is so inspiring.
I never pack on time.
Danielle said, oh, I want to bathe. When you said you're lonely, it wasn't because you wanted to bathe.
No, because it's a different kind of loneliness. Let me tell you, it's like a deep one I've never experienced before. But yeah, you know, see what God does.
Danya said, wow, I honestly didn't realize you were there for a year. So great. And then she says, will you go back for another? And I think we established that, yes, you're going back.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So it was a pleasure and honor. Thank you for like, in the split of a second, you just came on. Oh, tell us something in Khmer.
Well, I said Akuncharan, which is thank you. I thank you so much. And I can say Niom Srolang Niet, which is I love you, basically talking to you, Dio.
I love you too.
Niom Mien Matpiek Jaran, no Kampuchea. I have a lot of friends in Cambodia. I don't know. I only know the basics. I can kind of get myself around, but I really pray that the Lord would give me a deeper understanding for the language, because that's the desire of my heart. So
amen. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Your mom says we love you, and may the Lord continue to bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ma. I love you.
Awesome. Yay. So this was amazing. It's an honor to be your friend, to be your sister, to go through this journey with you. And just your journey has opened up my eyes, and I'm excited for what God is doing continuously. And so anyone listening now or later, just know that in the comments section, you are able to follow Amber. Please give to the mission. You know, her life is sold out for Jesus. She's out there helping those that don't know him. She's bringing the gospel to a place where otherwise they would not hear it. She's learning their language so that she can share with them in their understanding. You know, her life it's amazing to witness. And so I encourage you to give monthly if you can. The links are on. Follow her, follow the story. And oh wow, Kyla says, I love your heart and seen it from the day I met you. Blessed to know you. And so we're grateful, we're honored. We give God glory. Will you guys also pray for Amber?
Yes.
Pray for her
Please,
spiritual
that's the
strength.
main thing.
Yes, pray for her spiritual strength. Pray for her protection when she's traveling, when she's there. Pray for her wisdom and her discernment, you know, and that she'll continue to grow in stature and in wisdom and in favor,
Yes,
you know. Because
Amen.
it's spiritual above all, and we know that she's in a very dark nation, you know, when it comes to the gospel. So pray for her. And share this with your friends.
Yes, please. Wow, I don't know how to thank you for this. I really
God appreciate
it. And just finding the space to learn about like missionary life. Because, you know, a lot of people just see, you know, a few pictures or 1 to 2 week missionary trips, which are awesome. But really, what does, you know, long-term missionary life look like? And I don't think everybody knows what some of them go through, including myself. Some of them even get really sick. You know, there's just different things that people encounter. And so it's good that you are helping bring awareness to this space. So thank you, Dio. We love you.
I love you too. All right, y'all. So we are out. And yeah, we love you.
Love you.
Let me log off. Yay, Amber. I'm so excited.
Thank you. I really mean what I said about bringing awareness, Dio, because you know, some people think missionaries just don't roll up in villages and share the gospel and try to make everybody believe. And then they go on to another village and then they go back to their country. And it's just, it doesn't work that way. And sometimes it does, but in my opinion, it's not so effective. You know, people want to know that you care about them. If you're preaching Jesus, then you got to show what this Jesus life is.
Yeah.
So